Let us return to the narrative. With the Ionian revolt crushed by 493 BC, Darius turns his attention westward. He's not forgotten Athens, nor has he forgotten Eretria, which has sent ships to help burn Sardis. Before sending armies, as said, he sends envoys. These envoys travel from city to city throughout Greece, demanding earth and water, the traditional symbols of submission in the Persian world. To give earth and water is to acknowledge the great king as ruler of land and people alike. Herodotus is our only source for this custom, but there is no reason to doubt him. The practice fits very well with Persian imperial ideology, which expected ritual acknowledgement before force. Most Greek states comply at once. This is important. The later image of a united Greece standing bravely against Asia is a fantasy. Most city-states calculate sensibly. Persia is immensely powerful and has just crushed rebellion with ease. Submission costs little and promises peace. Two states, however, do something different. The Athenians throw the envoys into a pit and kill them. The Spartans throw them into a well, telling them to find their earth and water there, and kill them. This is an act of sacrilege as well as defiance. Envoys are sacred under Greek and Persian custom. To kill them is to invite divine anger. Herodotus tells us that the Spartans later feel guilt and attempt ritual atonement, and I will talk about that when the time comes. From Darius's perspective, however, the matter is simple. Diplomatic defiance has now become moral justification for war. At this point, I need to repeat what I've said already. The Persian response to Athens and Eretria is not emotional, and it is certainly not reckless. It is not driven by oriental fury or some royal tantrum. It is methodical and consistent with how large empires behave when challenged on their frontiers. Herodotus himself makes this clear, though later readers appear often to have ignored him. From the Persian point of view, the Ionian revolt has been suppressed successfully. Order has been restored. The taxes are flowing again. What remains unresolved is a precedent. Two mainland Greek cities-states have attacked a Persian provincial capital. They have burned it and then escaped punishment. If that precedent is allowed to stand, Persian authority in the entire Aegean, and indeed beyond, is weakened. Deterrence, once eroded, is expensive to rebuild. What Persia therefore undertakes is not a war of conquest in the Greek sense, but something closer to a police action on an imperial scale. The objectives are limited and clear. 1. Punish Eretria, which, to whatever small degree, participated directly in the burning of Sardis. Punish Athens, which did the same on a larger scale and then withdrew. Demonstrate to the rest of Greece that resistance is futile and Persian power is irresistible. This is not annihilation, it is enforcement. The map on this slide illustrates the logic. The Persian fleet does not sail blindly west. It advances step by step across the Aegean. It secures islands and harbours. It secures supply points as it goes. And that is how maritime empires generally behave. Each island becomes a base. Each submission shortens supply lines and lengthens the imperial reach. Herodotus notes that many islands submit without resistance. This is often presented as cowardice. In fact, it is calculation. These communities have watched Ionia fall. They have no reason to believe Athens can or will protect them. In 490 BC, a force is assembled. It is placed under the command of Datis, a Median noble, and Artaphernes, nephew with the same name of the satrap of Sardis. This pairing matters. Datis represents royal authority and experience. Artaphernes represents continuity and local knowledge. With them travels Hippias, now rather aged, the exiled Athenian tyrant. This is not an accident. From the Persian point of view, Hippias is a legitimate ruler, unjustly expelled by a volatile people. Restoring him would be cheaper and more stable than imposing direct Persian rule. And this too is imperial logic. The Persian force sails west and sails on Euboea. The first target is Eretria. Herodotus makes it clear. Eretria is chosen deliberately. It is not the strongest Greek city, it is not the most guilty, and it is not the richest, but it is exposed and it is symbolically useful. The Persians lay siege to the city. Herodotus gives a detailed account of the siege because he's interested not only in Persian power but in Greek failure. Eretria does not fall because the Persians are unstoppable. It falls because the Eretrians cannot agree on what to do. Herodotus tells us that some argue for surrender, some argue for evacuation, some argue for resistance. The usual factions take shape, and no clear decision is made or sustained. It is a familiar pattern in Greek history. Civic freedom produces debate, but debate under pressure can lead to paralysis. After 6 days, the city is betrayed from within. The Persians enter, the temples are burned, the population is deported and resettled in the interior of the Persian Empire. Herodotus makes a point of noting that the Eretrians are not slaughtered indiscriminately, they are removed. This matters. The city has not been destroyed out of rage, it is destroyed as an example. The message is clear. Rebellion leads not to heroic extinction, but to erasure. A city can vanish without its people's death. Identity and autonomy and memory, those are what are destroyed. It is an efficient punishment. Herodotus later tells us that the descendants of these Eretrians were still living together in Persia in his own day, preserving their language and their ways. Empire does not need to kill to dominate. Successful empires do not need to kill to dominate. With Eretria neutralized, the Persians move on. They sail south towards Attica. Time for the Athenians to be punished. And at this point, the strategic logic appears to be complete. Athens is isolated. Sparta has not committed. The Persian fleet controls the sea. The army is intact. The army is confident and supplied. The objective, remember, is not conquest of Greece, but discipline of a single city. Seen from the Persian point of view, what happens next should be routine, but they don't yet understand Athens. They don't yet understand Greek political desperation. They have not yet learned that a citizen militia fighting for its own survival on its own ground can behave in ways that no imperial planner expects. The lesson will be taught at Marathon. But at this moment, as the Persian ships turn south, nothing looks reckless or foolish. On the contrary, if one were forced to bet with the information available in 490 BC, one would bet on Persia.